let me ask you a simple question. The muqatta'at, like alif lam mim, alif lam ra, how many positions have you found in the classical books for the interpretation of these letters?
As many times as it actually appears in the Qur'an.
Exactly.
Hundreds.
So the question then is very simple. Are we sitting here in, mashallah, 2016, 2017, 2018, are we allowed to add to those interpretations, or are we stuck in a time warp where, suppose we found 15 positions or 17 positions or 20 positions and khalas, that's it, we're not allowed to add any more? How much leeway do we have with the Quran when it comes to tafsir?
There's no doubt that if we don't create leeway for people to reflect and think about it, then what's the point of the Quran being revealed aslan?
Exactly. So the problem therefore is that there are many people, many movements, and you know the ones I'm referring to, that are literally stuck that, look, if this is what is found in the tradition, we're not even allowed to add another position, right? And of course you have the other side, that's the hardcore progressives, and they're like, well, doesn't matter what the classical and the tradition says, we're allowed to interpret it however we please, right? So there has to be a certain dhawabit, there has to be a certain usul that allows us to add positions even as we remain within the framework of traditionalism.
But the problem when you teach tafsir is that folks are not interested in learning these usul, you know what I'm saying? It's not exciting, it's not something which, they think that I want to just find out what it actually means, as opposed to learn how to actually work out what it means. The actual principles to use. Because if we were able to teach that to people, give them the restrictions, the boundaries, where you shouldn't go, and the large area for you to play with, and I use play in the intellectual sense, within a number of boundaries, with the conditions of scholarship and understanding, the rules of the of the Arabic language, and of course making sure that it's congruent or in line with the Aqidah, then that's what we need to teach, or we need to introduce it out of tafsir lessons and so on, don't you think?
So the way that I do tafsir is slightly different. I believe that the average Muslim really just wants to learn from the Quran that which will benefit obviously him or her in his daily life. If you listen to my tafsir, I did tafsir Surah Yusuf, I did other tafsirs, I believe what I've done is I've taken the classical tradition, and without telling them what I'm doing, I do it in front of them. I actually take, and there are interpretations that I've derived that are actually modern, you're not going to find them, but I don't point out, I say, oh, by the way, this is a modern. No, they don't need to know all of that stuff, right? So to make it practical, spiritually uplifting, relevant, I believe that...
You see, my problem with that, Afwan, my problem with that is that, there's no doubt that will play a very, have a good function with a lot of people, the majority even. But subhanAllah, the real thing that we want from students, from Muslims in general, is to be able to have the confidence to read the Quran and to reflect upon it themselves. Not necessarily just read the Quran and say, right, I was told it meant this. This Quran is something which is applicable across the ages. It can only be applicable in the future, so as you said, right now, 2016, and then next year, and then in 100 years. If people have the confidence to be able to, this is what the Quran means to me now, of course, avoiding the huge danger of, as you said, progressive or regressive Islam followers that decide that, no one has any right to tell me what the rules are. It doesn't matter that I don't know Arabic, it doesn't matter that I've never studied Islam, it doesn't matter that I don't know what tafsir actually means. I just, I take a word and I turn it upside down because that's what it means to me. Obviously we have to warn against that, but I think, I'm certainly when I look at myself, when I started practicing Islam, I started practicing Islam not through being taught Aqidah or given a heart softener or whatever, but by a teacher who said, hey, what do you think about the Quran? It gave me the confidence. So I was like, me, am I allowed to do that? Are you kidding? Can I have even a thought here? And he controlled my thought process, and that's what I want to do when I teach tafsir. I want to say, listen.
It reminds me of a personal story from my own life. SubhanAllah, the first time that I really look back at my life, and the first time I genuinely had what I would call an iman rush, an iman boost, was when I was 12 years old, and I opened up Yusuf Ali and I read Surah Yusuf cover to cover, like beginning to end. That was the first time I genuinely felt like a connection with the meaning of the Quran.
Yes.
Even though nobody had taught me anything to tafsir, but it's a story that obviously you understand, right? And you don't need to have a PhD in theology or in usul al-tafsir to derive benefits from that story. And I read it in a translation. I had never read Surah Yusuf before, and I remember I was just mesmerized. I finished the whole surah in one sitting, and I was just overwhelmed. That was like, of course, I had appreciated the recitation of the Quran. Who doesn't as a child? Abdul Basit and Machawi. But the meaning of the Quran, I had never really, studied the meaning until I opened up an English translation at that.
Yeah.
So that reminds me that, you know, and Ibn Abbas, as you know, the famous statement of Ibn Abbas, that there are levels of the Qur'an. The basic meaning is that what everybody can understand.
Yes.
And then those that the people
whole quarter of it.
everybody, exactly. Yes, everybody can understand. Then you have those that are specialists in the language, can derive even more benefit. Then you have specialists in the Islamic tradition. Then you have a level that only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows. We need to teach our students, the people that are learning, we need to teach them, look, it's okay for you to derive level 1 meaning. Be careful of level 2 and level 3 until you're qualified. And they have to know the limits. And then of course level 4 only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows.